top of the morning, and it is a beaut.
And the hope of the Irish as the future champion of the world.
A podcast is kind of like it's like a radio show that's not on the radio.
Welcome to the Barry J. McDonald podcast. The place where dreams get dusted off and acted on. Because life is too short. We're living on a rock that's flying through space, and hey, what the hell else were you going to do with yourself here?
Hi, this is Barry here, and you are very, very welcome to today's podcast episode. Now, today's podcast episode is entitled Running from Minimum Wage Workers. Now, the other day, my kind of quick-witted 12-year-old came out with a witty reply to a question I'd asked him. You know, minutes before, him and his mum had gone into the shop to get a couple of things. One of the things was a packet of chewing gum from me. And then my son, Finn, comes racing back out and hands me the packet. Now, he came out without his mum, and the way he raced out the door, he just reminded me of somebody who was just shoplifting and was just sprinting for freedom. So I just said to Finn, I said, did you pay for that? Knowing that, of course, he did pay it. Finn is the type of child who would never race out of the shop without paying for something. And he kind of caught me on the hop with his response, because he said to me, of course I did. And even if I didn't, do you really think that he would chase me? He's a minimum wage. Now, I was kind of caught, that response. It wasn't something that I was expecting, and I started laughing at it. Not that the fact that, this chap was on minimum wage, because I'm not kind of laughing from my gold-plated tower or my gold-plated mansion. Of course not. But I just kind of, when I thought about it, I couldn't picture, this worker racing around a car park trying to get his hands on a 12-year-old because he stole a packet of chewing gum. Now, going back to minimum wage, I worked in many, many jobs for minimum wage. If you've listened to this podcast for long at all, you will have heard me mention many, many a story of where I used to do a lot of shelf stacking at night time to kind of, keep a roof over my family's head. So I know what it's like to work for a minimum wage. But there's a problem with kind of working for a minimum wage, especially when you come on to the internet. And the reason is because a lot of us who have, only worked for maybe $10, $15, $20, kind of carry that mindset over to the internet, and we kind of value an hour of our life at only that amount. Now, when you think about it for a moment, if you were on your deathbed, if you could buy back an hour of your life, I'm sure you would pay anything to get that hour back. I'm sure you would pay far, far more than $10 or $20 that an employer might be paying you right now. I'm sure you would see how valuable it is. And a lot of us, unfortunately, who have come from the route of, working for a minimum wage, see an hour of our time as only worth 10 hours or only worth 20 hours. And sometimes I have to tell the people who I follow on my email list to think bigger than that. Think bigger than the limited employee mindset that they have. Think bigger when it comes to doing activities. Stop working on small activities that, you could maybe outsource, or you could get someone else to do it for you, for maybe $10 or $15, but, not have to take on, small activities or small things that aren't really going to pay you. A lot of us, again, I would put myself in those shoes. When I came online, I would do everything. I was kind of, I was the waiter, I was the chef, I was the bottle washer, I did everything. So when it came to my business, I would do all the kind of blogs. When it came to putting a blog up, I would do everything. I would set up the WordPress blog from scratch. I would, pick the right themes. I would do the content. I would do the ads. I would do everything. So anything on my blog, I done every part of it. When it come to HTML coding or doing hyperlinks, if I didn't know how to do it, I would go searching all over the internet to find out how to do it. And sometimes working on, a WordPress blog or working on a website or working on something, you could spend hours and hours just scouring the internet looking for an answer. How do I get this hyperlink to click over here? Or how do I get my blog to look in a certain way? Or how can I do, small things that if I went over to maybe Fiverr, if I went over to Upwork, I could hire somebody to get rid of that problem, in a matter of hours or even a day at most. But no, I was trying to save money. I was, again, thinking with the mindset of a minimum wage worker, thinking, well, if I do this myself, I'm going to save money. And not thinking to myself that, me running around for 5 or 6 hours was a total waste of my time. How much work I could have got done in those 5 or 6 hours. But no, I didn't think that, because I could only see myself as a minimum wage worker, and I had only a value of maybe $10 or $20 on my kind of hourly rate. So what I want you to do is maybe just to spread your thinking a little bit bigger than you are right now, especially if you have maybe a day job, which is a minimum wage, and you're carrying that kind of mindset into your evening activities, or, your side hustle or whatever, that you see that what I'm doing online is the same value as what I'm doing offline. Again, no. And again, I would say to you, when you are maybe thinking of activities, try to find some pieces of work where, you will get paid for it over and over and over again. For example, when I started doing my fiction writing, in the early days when I was putting that book together, I didn't make any money on that book. So for example, maybe if I spent maybe a week or two writing a short fiction book, I didn't make any money on it. But on the backside, those 2 weeks I would have done writing that book paid me 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. I've got fiction books right now that I've written almost, I think one of them is actually coming up to maybe 10 years ago, and I still get paid on that. So what I would remind you to is not to think, when you've come from a minimum wage kind of background, it's easy to think, well, I have to do an hour's work for an hour's pay. But you kind of need to maybe go a little bit bigger than that, or kind of open your mind up to the possibility of thinking, something, if I do an hour's writing right now, it could be worth $100 to me. It could be worth $1,000 to me. It could be worth maybe $10,000 to me in the years ahead. But a lot of us don't do that. We kind of go for the quick fix, doing an hour's work now, expecting an hour's pay, and then going back for another hour's work to get another hour's pay. So, sometimes, it's very, very easy for us who have come from minimum wage to kind of fall into that background of thinking that we're only worth a certain amount, or that we have to provide an hour's service for an hour's pay. No, you don't. Especially on the internet. You could record YouTube videos today that could make you money next week, next month, next year. Again, TikTok videos. Again, podcast. I'm recording this piece of content right now. It's probably going to take me maybe 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes of my day, but it's going to be added to all the other podcast episodes, and those podcast episodes are probably going to help me drive traffic to my website in years from now. So I'm building constantly on all the content that I'm doing, and that is what I want you maybe to do the same as well. Expand your thinking, think bigger, and stop thinking of this kind of mindset of a minimum wage worker. So that is my lesson for the day. As I said, a lot of us do, unfortunately, do kind of think that because we're a minimum wage worker, well, that an hour of our time is only worth, $10, $20. But I would maybe leave you with the thought, imagine you walk up to Elon Musk today and you said to Elon, how much is an hour of your time? If I was to pay you for an hour of your time where we could sit down and talk, how much would he charge? Now, for a fact, Elon Musk wouldn't allow you to pay probably more than maybe $1,000, maybe $5,000, maybe $10,000 to get an hour of his time, because he knows how valuable an hour of his time is. And the reason he knows his hours are so valuable is, well, it's because of where he is, but because he's put a larger value on his time. He treats his time a lot more preciously than, a lot of us who are in minimum jobs, who think that an hour of our time is only worth $10. But again, as I said, going at the end of your life on your deathbed, how much would you pay for an hour of your time? And when you look at it through that lens, I'm sure you can see how precious your time is. And maybe you shouldn't be giving it away so easily, wasting it on projects that are only going to pay you a few dollars, or wasting it with people maybe that aren't, worth your time, that you should be focusing on your business. Instead of being over on Netflix, instead of being over on Facebook, focus that time on something that is going to build, something that's going to make you far, far more money than the way you are wasting your hours right now. So think big and think beyond a minimum wage. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Before you go, Barry wants to show you how you can use the power of stories to sell more of your products and services. He says that if you head on over to the rightcom.com website now, he'll show everything you need to do. Have a great day, and thanks for dropping by.